Joining me for today is Reid Addis, retired architect and Bluebeam specialist, to show us all the new enhancements in Bluebeam Revu 2019.
We're going to take a look at some of the new features in here. I've got bad news and good news for all of you. The bad news is that there aren't a lot of new features in the software. The good news is that the features that are in there are pretty spectacular. So we're going to show you the good features in here, and hopefully that will be something that will convince you that it's definitely worth switching over to this release, especially after some of the issues that we had with the 2018 issue. So again, Bluebeam is a product that is a PDF reading and editing software. It's going to be used by the architects, engineers, and contractors that are involved in building our physical world. It began in 2002 as a product that was trying to answer the question to architects and engineers to keep better track of markups in files. And you can see the numbers on here that have grown since then. 1.6 million users around the world. Revu, again, is going to increase accuracy because we have one central document that is our truth. It will reduce costs tremendously if you're using paper or Adobe at this point, or some other products that don't allow for collaboration or electronic tracking of your changes, as well as minimizing risks, right? So that we have one common truth to the project. Again, the standard propaganda that comes from Bluebeam, but it's true that the files are fast. The information is stored not only graphically, but in text form. And again, you can set up tools that will allow you to standardize the process of marking up your files. So the number one item here is the improved rendering speed. Now, it's kind of tricky to try to show this to you, but I've loaded up a 3D file to take a look at. The load times really haven't changed very much, but I have noticed that there is a major improvement in being able to move around in a file. I don't know if any of you ever work with 3D files. The 3D aspects of the software are pretty amazing, but there will also be improvements just in 2D files as well. The larger projects that you have, the more data that you have that's visible on the screen, the faster it is going to render. So let me see if I've got a demo. So let me see if I can get the actual product up over here. Okay, so I've preloaded this particular file. Oh, well, I thought I had preloaded it. Looks like it's going to load up again. So we'll give it, I thought I had that loaded, so we'll wait a second or two for it to load. But this is a three-dimensional model of the building that I live in here in Philadelphia that I modeled in Revit, and then I printed it out to PDF form, and I did have it ready to go so that we could avoid this load time. But we will get to see that the load time takes what it does for 3D models, and there it is. And my unit is right here. It's on the third floor of this section of the building. But this is in perspective form. See if I can get it to tilt a little bit for me here, right? So I'm just moving, the cursor around. It's a little slower actually with the on-screen sharing than it was without that, but the performance is pretty fast. Now, you can set up all kinds of different lightings, so I can set up lighting here so that there's none. Oh, that's not good. Let's set it up as, I'll set it up as day lighting, right? And you can have that sort of an image. You have the ability to come through and adjust, you can adjust other finishes on the building. So you could decide, well, you wanted it to be, I've got one here called illustration, and it'll change the building to, didn't look very different on that one, or it's still thinking about it. Oh, it's still thinking about it. So again, the speeds, there we go. The ability to kind of move around in here, right, with a three-dimensional model. It's pretty fast. This is a fairly big model in here. See if I can get my 3D toolbar back up. You can also, let me see if I go back to something like this. You can also play with the cut plane on this particular model. So there is a cut plane that you can cut through the model with, and you have the ability to select that. And then there are poles on there, X, Y, and Z axes that you can drag up or down. And so you can slice through the building in a three-dimensional model. Right? So the improvements in speed are pretty significant. And again, we have a lot of detail in here. You can see I've got the stove and refrigerator and sinks in here. There's a lot of bathroom fixtures. Right? So pretty easy to move through the project fairly quickly. And then again, I can turn that cut plane off if I want, right, to hide that. Okay. So again, one of those things that's not easy to demonstrate. It'll be something that'll be probably easier for you to see when actually using the software itself. Okay. The thing that is pretty easy to show, and I think is the most amazing aspect of the product, is the quantity takeoff improvements. There is now a prompt for scale if it doesn't exist in your file already, and then the ability to use independent units for the same kind of markup. So if you are doing an area markup, you can set it for square feet or square yards if you're doing carpeting, or you can do cubic feet or cubic yards if you're doing volumes. And again, you can use those to do calculations in the markup list at the bottom of the screen. So I wanted to show those particular items to you. Let me go back to the software. So I'm going to go ahead and close the 3D file so we don't get bogged down on that. I'm going to open this one, which is a site drawing. And one of the things that's interesting about this particular drawing is the fact that at the bottom of the screen, down here on the right, there's an item said scale is not set. So one of the things we always talked about in training is calibration. It's very important to calibrate your file so that you know how large things are. Because if it's not calibrated properly and you're measuring, you're going to get different lengths or different areas or different volumes than what the drawing represents. There are two ways to do calibration. You can pick 2 points and set your distance, or you can use scale. Now, this particular file says that the scale is 1 inch equals 30 feet. I don't see a lot of actual physical measurements in here that are very long. There's a couple here, like 60 feet. But it would be better to have a longer distance if I could. And so I'm going to use that particular scale, the one that's the 1 inch equals 30 feet, when I go to put something on here. So let's say I wanted to do maybe an area for whatever particular reason. And I will go ahead over to my tools and my measure, and I will choose area. Now, as I create my boundary, I should have calibrated before this, but I will double left click at the end of this, and all of a sudden I get this box that you normally get when you start by calibrating, right? But because the scale is not set in this particular file, it's going to be asking me to calibrate it or to set a preset scale. So instead of calibrating, I have a scale of 1 inch equals 30 feet. I'll click on that particular input. You can do a custom scale if you want, or you can use presets. So in my preset list, I have 1 inch equals 30 feet. That's built into the software. I can set my precision, right, maybe to an inch, and I could set the page range, right? So if I had more than one sheet in this particular document, or more than one page in this document that was at 1 inch equals 30 feet, I could go ahead and set the scale for all of those. I can then go ahead and say, apply the scale, and it creates my square footage for me. Okay. So that is a really nice feature in the software, being able to ask that question. Now, another thing that is part of this new calibration and being able to change your different values for the same function, this particular thing with an area tool. What I've done is I've actually created over here on the left-hand side of the screen, using the tool sets tool, is in my particular tool set, I've created a couple of different area tools. So I've got a ceramic tile, I've got carpeting, and I've got flooring in here. But you'll notice that I have this same item, which is area, right? So let me minimize this on the left. And if I select this boundary and look at what it is over here on the left-hand side of the screen, taking a look at that particular item, which is really an area, and it has all of the same items in it as this, right? So these are really the exact same measurement tool, right? So up here it says that's an area measurement at the top. And if I click on this one here, that's an area measurement, right? So they're both area measurements, and yet I've got one set here to square feet and one set to square yards. So how do we actually achieve that? Well, the way you do that now in this particular release of the software, if I were to just do an area in here, right? And I'll just go ahead and just quickly go around this boundary. Not going to worry too much about getting it placed exactly. It's going to use the default of square feet. Let me try that again. See if I can get this guy to move over. There we go. So you can move the text by holding down the shift key. So this is square feet, but maybe that's carpeting, right? I'd like that to be square yards. So you'll notice that we now have a new item up here in the properties bar called units. And if I go to my drop down for units, you'll notice that I could take area if I wanted to and change that from square feet to square yards. That was impossible to do in previous releases. And if you are trying to do those kinds of takeoffs, it's such a fantastic improvement. I can't even begin to tell you. I'm going to actually show you the difference that it makes in terms of your markup list at the bottom. I could also try, I'm not sure if my match property tool, let's see if I can get this guy, if I use my match property tool and match it onto this, I get the pattern. Yep, the only thing that doesn't change is the name. I'd have to add carpeting to that. But now if I select this and come back over into its properties, right? It's now called area measurement. I'll change that to carpeting. And I can come in and add a label to it if I wanted to also. So if I wanted it in the, there it is for me. Right, so if I want that to appear, I can change that there. Even better than that would be to set that up as a preset tool. So if I had another area, of course, I don't think carpeting in the bathroom would be such a good idea. So I'll go ahead and delete that. but we might have a room here that would have carpeting. And again, if I were to take this tool and create it over here in my tool set, I could double-click carpeting, and then trace around the room. And again, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to drag a rectangle, right? And it would come in as carpeting using square yards. And now if I wanted ceramic tile, I'd choose my ceramic tile tool. And again, for the sake of speed, just draw a rectangle, and it would be using the title ceramic tile, and it would be using square feet instead. If you have other items that you want to list within a particular area, of course, you have the ability to select it, and then I believe it's either in the measure tools or it's in the property tools to add additional call-out information. I always forget exactly where that is. Oh, here it is, show caption. So it's under the properties, and if I come over to edit that, this tool right here, I could add things like depth or volume or length or width or height. So you can add to the label that's on there if you want. That's built into the previous software. The other thing that's nice in this particular release of the software is you also up here on the properties bar at the top are now getting this drop down with all of this information. It's listed also, if you want, in the markup list at the bottom of the screen, but this allows you to very quickly see, oh, I don't have any depth set for this. So maybe I want to go in there and set that again in the properties, either on the top of the screen or on the right-hand side of the screen. But what having these different values now for the same measurement tool allows me to do is some very sophisticated stuff in my markup list. So in previous releases, I wouldn't have been able to have it read out this way with square yards or square feet, right? I just couldn't do that. What would happen is I would have all the areas as square feet. So then I would have to set up a special column that was a formula that took square feet and divided it to get square yards. And then I'd have to set up multiplication factors. And I would have to have all these extraneous columns down here in the markup list that made it very, very complicated to generate your costs. Well, now I don't have to do that anymore. So I can create custom columns for cost per square foot, total square foot cost, and I can do that now from the markup list columns, manage columns. Now, you've always been able to do this, but instead of having to create formula columns to try to get square feet to square yards, I don't have to do that anymore. And so for my cost per square feet, I can simply say that's a number. Same thing for my cost per square yards. That's just a number. And then when I want my total square footage costs, right, I can set up a formula where I multiply area by the cost per square foot column I just created. The same thing for square yards, same thing for linear costs or item costs. So now I can create these custom columns. And one thing that you're going to notice now, this list, the display order that I've created for my columns here at the bottom of the screen, and the display order here are the same. So if I move a column here in the markup list or change its order in the display order, they will stick, they will stay. So these will be exactly the same. In 2018, if you moved something screen to a new position, as soon as you open the manage column and pick OK, all of the columns went back to their original default position. It was frustrating, is the most polite way to put it, and had never done that before. And they have corrected that situation in 2019. They are not planning to correct that, the programmers at Bluebeam in the 2018 product. So if you're in 2018 and you are frustrated with that list, please move on to 2019 because that goes away. Plus, you get this wonderful new feature of being able to do these separate area values or separate linear values or separate volume values for the exact same tool that you weren't able to do before. Also improved a bit are these more complex fills. I usually take my time on them. I'm going to see if I can do it a little bit faster today and a little bit, maybe a little bit messier, but let's see if I can get it to function for me. I'm not seeing it there. Let me come up here to Tools and come over to Measure and come on down to Dynamic Fill. So if you haven't played with Dynamic Fill, it's a new feature added a few releases back. There are settings to allow you to set your boundary size, the speed of filling, and the speed for the size of the fill and the fill speed. So I'll click on the Settings tool again. Then I'll go ahead and click on the Fill tool. And what you do is you basically hold down your left button and start to fill in the boundary, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And you can kind of work a little bit faster in this release than you could in previous releases. And I've just got a little tiny bit more here and a little bit tiny more there. So it seems to be a lot more accurate in this release than it has been in previous releases. It had a tendency to very quickly spill over edges. What you do is you choose what you want it to be up here at the top. What I want this to be is an area calculation. I can go ahead and apply that if I plan on doing more fills, or I can simply choose close. And very quickly, I get my square footage calculation. And again, if that was supposed to be square yards, I could very quickly select that, drop down to my units, change my square feet to whatever else I want it to be, for instance, square yards, and it'll now convert over to that. So there are some really, that's just such a wonderful new feature in there. I can't really begin to express my gratitude to the people at Bluebeam, because when I'm doing training, that's like one of the big questions, how can we do that? And the answer is, previously you really couldn't. There were ways around it, but it was much more complicated. Okay, so that takes care of that particular feature. Let me go back over to my demo. Let me make sure I got all three. Yeah, and so these running totals, again, the running totals you'll have in your markup list. One of the things that's a little bit tricky to do is total project cost. So the problem is right now I'm sorting by subject, and none of the subjects have anything in common. And so I can't get a total project cost because of that. But all I need to do is find a column that has everything exactly the same. At this point, it's either the page index or it's the author column. These two columns, these have everything exactly the same. You can always put a dummy column in if you want, called sorting. And if you click on that column, it will now sort everything, and suddenly I now get my project total. So I can very quickly get my project total simply by sorting on a column that has common features. I can always, as well, go back to sorting by subject, and I have the ability to export this to a comma delimited or an XML file that I can open in Excel or any other program that reads that, like Excel, and you can do your cost estimating in there. Okay. The final item, which may not be of much interest except to a few out there, but it could be an important item, actually there's two items left, is the Bluebeam Revu configuration editor. I'm going to take you onto the Bluebeam website to show you how to find the Revu configuration editor. So prior to this release of the software, if you're the person in charge of trying to set up and install the the Bluebeam software, you had to basically open up this very complex file with a special editor, and you really had to understand what you were doing. So the text over here, right, it had to be exactly you had to find the exact feature, and then you had to know exactly whether to set it to a 1 or a 0 or whatever it is you wanted to do in here in order to configure the software for your office. Now you get a very clear graphical screen explaining exactly what it is that you're doing, whether you want it on or off. And you can go through and create a deployment for your office so that you can standardize the installation for the product. Okay. And here are some additional screens that you'll see. So there is the review features. Here are plugins for the different software. So how do you get to this? Well, after like tearing out 3/4 of my hair in talking to the people at Bluebeam support, saying, well, you just do this, you do, and I said, no, it's not really getting me there. I finally got a hold of one person who walked me through step by step. So I want to have you see this in case you want to do it. So what I want to do is go to support.bluebeam.com. So I'm going to come up here and go to support.bluebeam.com. And it takes me to this screen. And yes, we do know that Review 2019 is here. And then what we do is we go sort of to the bottom of the screen and we find Review Deployment. So I'll scroll to the bottom, left click on Review Deployment. That takes me to this page, which is my knowledge base page, and I will go to the bottom of the page and find the Review Deployment package. So I'll scroll down here. There's my Review Deployment packages. And yes, if you don't know what you're doing, it's a good time to back out now. So that's basically what it's saying. On the next page, it says go to the middle and choose your Microsoft installation file for your machine. So if you have 64-bit, you will choose the 64-bit. And if you have a 32-bit, God help you if you still do, you'll go ahead and find the 32-bit, right? So you'll come down, let's click on this, and it will pop up a screen that looks like this. And you will go ahead and download that zip file, and then you will unzip it to somewhere. Two of the files that you will definitely need are going to be the Bluebeam Revu Configuration Editor, exe, and this MSI file. So you will start the editor and choose the MSI file that you want. So I will go ahead and do that. So I'm going to minimize this, come back, I have to come back out to my folder. I'm going to go down to the folder where I have this. I will go in and I will double left click the editor. That should start up, and there we go. So there is my deployment editor, and what I want to do is click on a new deployment. The MSI file is critical, so that is the file that is downloaded with the program that I just downloaded, and I'll go ahead and open that. You then choose your deployment folder. I will put it in the same spot that I have, even though I'm not going to create it, I do need to pick a spot for it. So I'll go ahead and place that in the same folder, my sales demo, my Bluebeam 2019. I'll go ahead and pick next. Now, if you are creating a deployment where you have a serial number and a product key, and you want it to be licensed immediately, you would put that information in here. I am going to create a demo. So this is a trial version. I get 30 days. Next. And here are my configuration screens. So I can come in here and decide on delayed authorization or not. Is this my built-in default PDF editor? Do I want a welcome page when it comes up? Do I have a preferences path for different items? Go to next. Do I want people to have administrative privileges or to have digital signatures or some of these other items on here? Next. Do I want to put these plugins into these different products or not? Next. And my deployment folder and skip pending reboot and silent install, and I would click create at this point. I cannot emphasize how easy this is compared to the old version of the configuration tools. So if you do need or understand the ability to create a deployment, pretty easy. The hardest thing is to actually find it on the Bluebeam website. I'm going to go ahead and close this, say, yes, I want to exit. Okay. The last thing I want to show you with a few minutes I have left, what this will allow you to do is view your drawings, right? You'll still need the software to edit them, but now you can view your uploaded PDFs to your sessions and projects. So now you don't have to go through Bluebeam to get to it. You can use any web browser. Again, you still have to have privileges to upload the files. So you still have to be an administrator to upload the files for to being able to view this with drawings. But you can get to it online with any of the software. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the bookmark that I set for Bluebeam drawings. Right? So it takes me to here, and I can go and click on this, and it shows me need to upload drawings. Here's how. So while anyone with a Bluebeam Drawings app can view drawings for free, right, you'll still need review with maintenance to upload your files, right? And then there's some information here, but you can really get there simply by going to drawings. Let me see if I can find it here. Drawings. Wait, oh, that's not it. That's where we just were, I think. So let me come up here to drawings.bluebeam.com. And again, if you need, if you are going to access the software, you need an ID and your password to get into Studio. But now what it'll do is it shows you all of your projects on here. And I guess it's not going to be sessions. It's just going to be projects. So I misspoke. I apologize for that. And you can get in there to view your files. So I can access drawings.bluebeam.com really from any device whatsoever. Now, I don't think I have the, well, maybe I do have the ability to create a new project. See if I can do that. Project, let me try demo 2019. I'm not sure it'll let me do that. Oh, there's demo 2019, so I can click on that. I have publish only, right? I don't have any drawings in here at the moment. There's no drawings published yet in here. View drawing log. But I've just created this particular project, and if I go back into Bluebeam and come over to Studio and sign in, I think it's going to say that I'm already signed in. Yes. There we go. Not really. So let's go ahead and sign in here. And come up to my projects, sessions, projects. There's my demo 2019. Right? So no files in there yet. I don't know if I actually upload one, if it's going to appear. I haven't really tested this, but let me try uploading a file. I'll add my open files, say OK. Those upload to here, and let me go back over to here. I guess they haven't been published for review or drawing log. So I haven't played with this extensively, but it's a new feature that, again, I haven't totally played with. Those are drawings. There's Studio, project name. Open that. I've got settings in there that I can set. There's my project ID, date, and owner. Again, I haven't played with it extensively in terms of being able to see the drawings, but in theory, if there's a published file in here, you're supposed to be able to see the drawings. So I guess I haven't published anything yet, just uploaded them. So that is another new feature, which it's going to take me a little bit of time to get used to as well. But it is supposed to allow you to view published documents from your phone, from your iPad, from really any device, Android, Mac, or Apple-based, as again, a nice new feature in the software. Let me come back over to our demo. And let's come back over here. Okay. So, Revu 2019 is available now. Dan is the man to talk to about purchasing it. He will explain to you the different options in there for Revu. There are 3 different options. There's a base model. There's a CAD version, which will add tabs, actually panels or tabs to your software programs. And then Extreme, which adds some additional batch functionality that's not in the base products. There are free upgrades and exclusive features and phone support that you will get from Bluebeam directly. Of course, you always have support with us, but that would be your active maintenance that you'd want to hold on to. And Dan can tell you more about that. And again, any questions about upgrading or buying or learning more, we have the microsolresources.com /products /vendor /Bluebeam.